Hi, welcome to this week's Authors Love Readers podcast, where we delve into the stories behind the stories. We're asking authors questions, some of them fun, some of them serious, and from their answers, you're going to learn things you never knew about the people who write the stories you love. My name is Patricia McLinn. I'm your host and designated question asker.
I'm Anne Gracie, and I'm an author who loves readers.
Now, let's start the show. Hi, welcome to this edition of Authors Love Readers podcast. Today we have Anne Gracie, all the way from Australia by the wonders of technology, and I am delighted to have her here with me. Anne and I met, do you realize, I was thinking about this, it was 10 years ago, because it was the Novelist Inc. conference in San Diego, the year that I was president of Novelist Inc. So I remember that precisely. Yep. And then in August of 2015, I was in Australia and New Zealand, and Anne was the best hostess and the best representative for Australia and Melbourne while I was there. And I will never forget you keeping me awake to fight the jet lag after the 30-hour trip.
That was actually the obligatory piece of torture.
Yes. But it was all worth it. It was all worth it. So Anne writes historicals, and we will get more into that. But first, I wanted you all to get to know her a little bit, and I always find out interesting things from these answers. So let's start with: did you have a childhood book that addicted you to stories?
I wouldn't say that there was ever one childhood book, but I suspect it was probably A.A. Milne. My parents and my older brothers and sisters used to read Winnie the Pooh stories to me when I was about 4, and the poems. I can still recite a whole heap of those poems off by heart. And then as soon as I learnt to read, which was just before I went to school, I devoured my older sisters' and brothers' books. And a lot of them were written by Enid Blyton, who was an English author, and she wrote endless series and with all kids having adventures. And I just devoured those books. And I think just about every English writer would be the same thinking about their childhood books. I think everybody read Enid Blyton in England and Australia. Not so much as America, because I don't know that they were even published there.
Yeah, I know her name, but I don't think I ever read her books. No, I know I didn't as a child.
We know Famous Five and the adventure books, and yeah.
Did you hear of the Bobbsey twins?
Yeah,
that was something I remember.
My eldest sister had those because my sisters used to read a book and that was it. But I had to always have a book on the go, so I read everything. I read my brother's stories, everything.
Yeah, I read those. My older sister had them too, and so I inherited those. And the Borrowers Afield. Yes. I loved that story.
Yeah, lovely. There's actually a little series. There's about 4 of them, I think.
I know. Yeah. I love those, and all the Wizard of Oz books. Not just the Wizard of Oz, but there was a whole series of books.
No, I didn't. I knew nothing about those. But
you should go back.
Yeah. Well, there are a number of. I think one of the reasons that I'm such a historical writer. When I was about 11, I discovered Georgette Heyer, and I never went back. I still reread her. I think that, and I read a lot of other historical novels. For me, historical novels weren't about history; they were just stories in a different time and place. And and that's still how I think. I don't understand it when people say, "Oh, I don't read historicals." I think, "Oh, really? That's odd."
So I have to ask, which is your favorite from Georgette Heyer?
Oh,
you say Heyer or Hare?
I say Heyer. Look, lots of people. She apparently at some stage called it Air. But I think the original, her grandfather was German, I think, and there was an attempt to make it not sound so Germanic in World War I and II. So I don't really know, but I say Heyer. I've always said Heyer, she's not going to haunt me. It's higher. And as far as my favourites, I don't know. There's so many I love. The Unknown Ajax, which is just very funny and very clever plotting. Probably the most romantic is Damerel. It's called Venetia is the book, and Venetia is the heroine, and Damerel is the hero, and he's gorgeous. The Convenient Marriage, which is about a very young...
Angsty.
Yeah. Friday's Child, another young bride, but some very funny minor character things. Oh, look, there's just so many. A few of hers were not successful for me, but most of them, they're just fabulous.
See, my absolute favorite is the Talisman Ring.
Oh, really? Yeah. I love that line.
I love that one.
Yeah, that line when she's the young girl who's not the heroine is talking about asking the very dour hero whether wouldn't he feel sorry for her to see a young girl all alone in a tumbrel going off to have her head chopped off, and he says, I'd be sorry for anyone. And he completely fails to see the romantic in her. It's lovely. There's some lovely humour.
Yes, it's wonderful. It is. I love the humor. Yeah. I also love her mysteries.
Yeah.
From the 1930s. Yeah. Terrific.
Yeah. No, they're good. Yeah.
Enjoy those a lot. Well, we got way off. Okay, I'm going to ask you another question. What's your favorite taste?
Salty sweet maybe. But look, I'm more a savoury than a sweet. One of my favourite indulgences, and people will probably yuck at that, but anyway, it's a French pasty sort of thing called anchoade, and it's anchovies and garlic and capers, and you and all mashed up together, and you smear it on hot toast, and I just adore it. But the other alternative is chocolate, of course. Chocolate.
Oh no!
Yeah.
I think that may be one of the times I would pass up the chocolate.
Yeah, not together, separately.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite color and why?
Probably blue. Blue's the most... There's so many beautiful variations of blue, going from the almost into lilac and down to sort of almost purple. But yeah, so many blues. Both my parents had blue eyes. I've got blue eyes. And my dad used to wear blue shirts and blue jumpers and stuff, and I just loved it. Yeah.
Okay, blue is for you.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you remember your mom or dad saying, a saying that they had, and now you hear yourself saying it?
Yes, and it's so silly. I hear it when other people's kids are talking to their mothers, and it's what Dad used to say to me: "Don't talk to your mother like that." And I want to say that, "Don't talk to your mother like that," and then I laugh because it's just so silly. So look, they weren't particularly, repetitious about things. There was a thing on the web, on Facebook recently, where someone said, what do your parents often say? And I said, clean up your room. I'm sorry, if you wanted something philosophical, clean up your room. I think it's still appropriate.
Well, in a way that is philosophical.
Yeah.
Stand in for many other things.
Absolutely, yes. We'll take it metaphorically as well as literally.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Do you have anything from earlier in your life that you used to fret over that now you think, who cares?
Yeah, sort of what strangers think. When I was a kid, we moved a lot, and so I was very concerned about fitting in, and not so much these days. I'm quite happy for people to just take me as I am.
That's a wonderful achievement.
Yeah,
so many of us don't.
Yeah. Well, I suppose because I've left so many people behind in my life, I just realised that the important ones will stick.
And you think that's because you said you moved?
Yeah, we moved a lot.
A lot?
Yeah, we moved a lot. And in life you just realise that there are some people who are important. I've got friends now that I made good friends with when we were 15, and and we're still good friends. And I've been to a couple of reunions lately. One was a school reunion, and one was kind of like a student house reunion. And in both instances, I just reconnected with those people so easily, and it was lovely. So the important people will stick.
Well, that's a good approach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, shifting a little bit. Most writers have a bad habit word. And if you don't, I don't want to hear about it.
I surely do.
Yeah, at my list, just and really. Oh, I use them all the time.
Okay.
So bare your soul here, Anne. What are your bad habit words?
Oh, yeah. Well, see, when you said your bad habit words, I thought Facebook.
Oh.
But the words I overuse, yeah, I think probably just and only. Yeah. Look, I've got lists of the rotten things, and I do it, and I do a go through, and I think there are certain phrases that pop up every book, and it's a new phrase per book almost. So yeah. I had to weed out a few in the latest book that I've just sent in. Her eyes were quite often wide and fathomless, and I had to do a search for wide and fathomless and take some out. So it's just I just get little quirks that pop up with every book.
I remember in one of my books, I had this poor woman smiling so much. I thought her mouth is going to start, just having cramps. That's
true. I do that too.
Now, you're left-handed or right-handed?
Right-handed.
Okay. On that hand, which is longer, your index finger or your ring finger?
Index.
By a lot?
Not a huge amount, but there's no doubt it's probably maybe a quarter of an inch.
I just find that fascinating. There is no useful purpose for asking this question. I'm just interested. And here is a question that I think will let the readers get to know you better. What 3 movies would you take with you to my very strange desert island that has a mechanism to play movies, but only 3?
The desert island with no running water, but movies. Yep,
right. None of that stuff. But you can watch 3 movies there forevermore.
Love Actually would have to be one of them. I can watch that endlessly and still really enjoy it. And maybe while you were sleeping, that movie reminds me of what I'm doing, when I'm writing, and I've possibly also because I've used it a fair few times as an example for when I'm teaching writing. So yeah, it's and I've just written an article that refers to it, so that's probably in my head. The third one, it's very hard. I don't know. I'm always bad with favourites. Whenever I'm asked a favourite anything, I have a little baby meltdown and think, oh, what about this? But it could be that. And then there's the other. So, all right, I'll just pick one. I'll pick one of Cary Grant's, the old black and white ones, or maybe not black and white. They might have even gone in colour. But, yeah, an old Cary Grant romantic comedy. I just adore Cary Grant. I think he's a darling.
One of my very favorites is His Girl Friday.
Yes. Yeah, that's a beauty.
The dialogue in that. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this question comes from a reader, and she asks, where do your stories come from? I know one author who dreams her stories. Another has a character suddenly taking up residence in her head. So how are your beautiful stories born?
I often, from most of my books, and certainly for every one of the books that sparked a series, it's not a dream, but it's like a dream, and it comes to me either when I'm about to fall asleep or when I'm just waking up and I'm in that dreamy state. and a scene will come to me, and it starts rolling in my head like a movie. And I have learnt to, this is a tragic admission, but I sleep with a notebook and pen next to me. And I can actually write whole pages with my eyes still closed, and be able to read it in the morning. And most...
That's a terrific skill.
For example, in The Autumn Bride, which was the first book of my Chance Sister series, there's a scene where the heroine climbs through a window. She's at absolute desperation point, and she's climbed through a window of this house in order to steal something small to sell and pay for a doctor to see her very sick sister. And instead of finding something to steal, she finds an old lady in a terrible situation. Now that scene came to me in that exact sort of dreamlike state, and I've got it. It covers about 4 pages in a notebook. My first book for Berkeley, which was The Perfect Rake, the scene where the hero and the heroine first meet, that's another one that came, and I have got their meeting, their whole conversation. That was about 5 or 6 pages, and it's almost identical to what was in the book. And then when I get that sort of scene, I think afterwards they stay with me for a while, because usually it's a scene that's not related to the book that I'm writing at the time, but it'll stay in my head and it will keep nagging at me to write. And so I know the longer it stays there, the more it impels me to write. And so then when I come to write it, I sort of think, well, who are these people and how do they get in this situation and where do I go from here? So,
I have so many questions to ask you off of that. Are they always scenes at the beginning of books?
No. My very, very first book, which was called Gallant Waif, and it was a RITA finalist for Best First Book, that has a scene almost at the end. It's the ballroom scene, if anyone's ever read it, and it's pretty much the heroine's black moment, where the thing that she fears most has come to pass. And that is right at the very end of the book. And again, that's about 5 or 6 pages in a notebook that came to me in that way. And when I came to decide what I was going to do with that, I thought, this is not, it's quite an intense thing. It makes people cry, a lot of readers say. And I had to work out who the characters were and how they got to that point. And it was quite a journey to get to that point. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's not always. And the meeting of the old lady, the girl climbing, Abby, climbing through the window, and the old lady, that comes about 3 or 4 chapters in. And they're not all straight away. They're not the opening scene necessarily. They're just a crucial scene.
So do you have some of them that you've written down the scene, but you haven't quite found the story that... Okay. Yeah, and you hold on to those then?
Yeah. Look, when one time I know when my editor was saying, well, you're finishing up this series, what's going to be next? And I said, I don't know. And because I didn't have a particular one in mind. And so I went through my notebooks. I've got a stack of those notebooks, and I've got so many story ideas and half-started stories and things. There isn't, I could be going till I'm 108, but probably won't.
From that initial story, how many of your books have come from a scene like that? What percentage? Half of your books?
Well, yeah, no, I've never worked it out. Usually if a series starts with that, those books those scenes are always the most powerful, whether they're the most powerful in the book. But sometimes I'll just have little scenelets come and bits of story or bits of scene. If I'm immersed in the story and trying to get to sleep or just waking up, sometimes a whole conversation between the hero and heroine will come. And I'll just go boom, 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 boom. And sometimes they're they're the funniest or the best chit chat, badinage. What do they call it? When it's going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, and sometimes that's just the best.
And it really catches the core of their relationship.
Yeah, and it's fun. And I'm at that stage, my pen is absolutely flying to keep up with the conversation that's happening in my head. So I wouldn't know what percentage, but it's a big part of my process. It's much more a part of my process than logically sitting down and plotting out a plot.
Do you know the characters' names at that point?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Sometimes they declare themselves pretty quickly. Sometimes I think she's named so-and-so, and then she will refuse to answer that name until I find the correct name. Yeah.
Early on in my books, there's a lot of she and he, and it's a good thing I know who they are because it can be a little confusing.
Yeah, I usually start with a name, but then it becomes pretty clear that they're not going to work or that they don't like it. I've had a series of Adams as heroes, and they've never lasted past about chapter 3. Adam just is never going to be one of my heroes, it seems. I keep trying because I quite like the name, but no, sorry, I'm not an Adam. Go away. Find out who I am.
So when you have that idea and it's time for that to deal with that book, you've finished the other one, because those things almost always come when you're supposed to be doing something else, don't they?
Sure. Yep.
So, but you've got that scene, you're going to deal with that book. How do you then take it from that scene to a complete story?
With great difficulty.
And many months of agony.
Yeah. For me, it's always hard. I have to cast around to find the starting point of the story. And my stories don't usually start with a bang. I hope they don't start with a whimper, but no. It takes me a while to find the right thread and to start at the right angle so that you get to see the characters in the way that I want you to see them. And then I do a lot of what ifs and what's next. And sometimes characters will come up with something, something will pop out of their mouths, or they'll say something and I'm thinking, oh, this isn't where I wanted to go at all, but it's right for the character, so I have to go there. So, yeah, I push on and see. And I do a lot of rewriting, but yeah.
At what point in this process are you telling your editor what you're going to write? Because it sounds like a synopsis would not be very informative for you.
No, well, it is and it isn't, because the synopsis it's reasonably general. I devoutly hope that my editor doesn't sit there and compare the final story with the synopsis. I devoutly hope she's not listening now. I have to put in a synopsis for a proposal pretty early in the piece, because they use that for the cover design and to start working out a back cover blurb. It's my best guess, and in general there are some similarities. The arc is kind of there. I know where they need to end up, but it's how they get there that's the difficulty. And, once I've got the synopsis in, I don't actually worry about it until they start doing that cover blurb. And then I have to know a whole lot more. And usually I'm not even finished the story by the time they've got the cover and the back cover blurb. It's known as pressure.
And that leads to a question from one of the readers who kindly volunteer questions. And she asks, when the cover image doesn't match the character description, and she says that's a pet peeve of hers, how does it feel for you, the author?
Okay, I've never had a character that looks completely wrong. Like, I've had some of my friends have got redheaded heroines who've got black hair, or, that kind of thing. I've never had that. That said, pretty much all of my cover people are not exactly how I've seen them. I was one of the earliest authors to have the headless heroines, and heroes.
Is that because you didn't know what color hair they had yet?
No. It was just the time. That was a new thing. The
Yes.
Honourable Thief was the book, and then the Honourable Thief, his and her heads are chopped off, and that a lot of people hated that. I didn't mind because I thought doesn't matter what the book is, the way I imagine the hero and the heroine, and not even my books, any books, they never are the person on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
So these days I'm very philosophical about the cover. As long as it's pretty and attractive and worth picking up, I'm happy.
That's very sane.
Yeah. Well, I've had to be, but a couple of times I've got the cover early enough to have, because often I get brides on the covers, and I've been able to incorporate the description of the bridal dress on the cover into the book.
Nice.
And that's fabulous. Yeah. That's been, that's fun when I can do that.
So as you're progressing through this book, you've had this sort of waking dream scene, and you're trying to figure out what brought those people to that point and how they're going to go on from there. I often liken that, by the way, to eavesdropping on people in a restaurant. That you see this vignette, and from that, just that little bit, you can pick up a lot of what got them there, and you can speculate on what's going to take them out. Yeah. But as you're going on with the process, which parts do you love of the process and which parts do you hate?
Easy. I love the bits where it's going well, and I hate the bits where I'm struggling. No. Really, that's true. That's it. When it's going well, I'm really happy. When it's not going well, I'm miserable. But I always get to a point 3/4 of the way through the book where I'm certain I'm never going to make it work. And my writing friends are really, really helpful on this. I go to them and I say, "Oh, this book is going to be terrible. People are going to hate it. I'm never going to work." And they say this really helpful advice. And you always say that. Shut up.
Yeah. So much sympathy.
Yeah, that's right. And but I still firmly believe that struggle at that point makes me go deeper into the story and work harder at it and fix the things that my instinct tells me are not working and that everyone else says is okay. And I think it makes for a better book. So I think angst and me in the writing process are a partnership.
Sounds like almost every book surprises you.
Yeah, look, I don't think I've never phoned in a book. I've never just thought, oh, look, just get it finished, get it gone. I try. I really work at it. I love the books. I fall in love with the characters, and I want it to be right. I want it to be the best I can make it. So yeah.
And that leads to another reader question who asked if you, as an author, do you think about the characters after the book is done? Do you wonder, how they're doing, or do you know how they're doing? And has it ever led to you writing a sequel, another book?
Yeah. Look, my first book for Berkeley, I wrote 4 books for Harlequin, and my editor did not want me to do any series at that point. And so the book that I sold to Berkeley, I actually started with the intention of sending it to Harlequin, but as always, my books were too long and I had to cut, it was yet another book that I was going to have to cut 40,000 words off to fit the Harlequin length. And I just thought, I don't want to do that. And it wasn't contracted. And so I ended up selling that book to Berkeley. And the first thing my editor said when I talked to her about it, she said, "Which girl's next?" Because I had the heroine for that was the oldest sister, the plain sister, in a family of pretty girls, and so it was about her. And I hadn't even thought about the sisters at all. And so I thought, oh, okay, we'll do something about the sisters. And so that was the editor sort of asking me, and that was contracted as a 3-book series. And then there was the younger sister who was just a child in that first book. And readers kept writing to me about it And I had so many letters, I mentioned it to my editor and she said, go ahead, write Grace's story. So that was a 4-book trilogy. And then the next series I had was to be a 4-book series, and it was a 5-book quartet. With the Chance
Math
Sisters.
challenged, Anne.
Yep. With the Chance Sisters series, that I achieved a 4-book quartet. That's only because I reckon each one was a seasonal bride, so I had autumn, winter, spring, blah, blah. So there's not that many extra series, so that restricted me. Extra seasons. Yeah, they do haunt me, and these days I've got a whole lot of half-started short other stories that were not contracted. One of them in particular, Marcus's story, I get reader letters for him all the time. When are you going to write Marcus's story? And I promise I am going to write it, but it's just fitting it in between the other things. And at some stage I'm going to write it, and I've got the story in my head and bits of it on paper, but yeah, I just haven't had the time to sort of put it together because my headspace is weird and I can only write 1 book at a time. So yeah, and I have to do the contracted ones. Well, some people do several books at a time, but I'm not like that.
Yeah, I'm one of those. But now, when you have these, you haven't named the characters yet, and say you name a secondary character, and then subsequently realize, oh, that person is going to be hero or heroine of another book. Have you ever gotten yourself in trouble with naming them or giving them a foible, or creating the secondary character who you think, oh, they're just sort of a walk-on, and then they won't walk off and they insist on having their own book, and then you think, why did I do this with them? Have you ever had that?
Yes, and I have it all the time. I have to prune back minor characters all the time. And in one of my books, was it The Honourable Thief? No, it was The Perfect Waltz. In The Perfect Waltz, I had a secondary romance with the hero's best friend and his original intended heroine. And it was just a little bit of fun on the side. And so many people said, we want their story. So, yeah, these days I think with independent publishing becoming a reality, if I can get my act together, I can write some of those stories and make them a bit shorter and self-publish them. But, at the moment, it's a theory rather than a practice.
Well, that leads me to actually kind of 2 questions. One comes from a reader, and she asked, what is your favorite place to write and why? And does it have an inspirational view? And then from that, I want to ask if you have a writing routine.
It changes. The favorite place changes. I write on a laptop on my bed, and I'm looking out the front window of my house, which is a lovely big bay window, and my dog sits in the end of the bed on her corner and watches for enemies like cats and people and warns me of their imminence.
Yes.
Another favourite place to write is my local library, which has nice comfy chairs and small desks, and I go there particularly when I'm stuck, and I handwrite. I don't take my laptop. I don't play on Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. I just handwrite, and my rule is that I'm not allowed to leave the library until I've got 3 pages. And this is a large sort of spiral-backed notebook. And 3 pages nearly always turns out to be 1,000 words or more. And often I'll do a lot more than 3 pages. Once I start, I'm off and running. Another favourite place to write, I'm very lucky, and I go away on a writer's retreat with a small group of friends. We've been doing it for 10 years. We had our 10th anniversary in March, and that's how I knew it was 10 years since we met, Pat, because after the very first one, I went to San Diego and to Nick. So we're coming up to our 11th, and we go up to the Gold Coast in Queensland. We have in an apartment building right on the beach. We each have our own apartment. A couple of them share a 2-bedroom apartment with a larger sitting room, and we all go there for meetings at lunchtime and night, and that's a pretty gorgeous and spectacular place. But to be honest, once I start, I could be living in a cave. In fact, I often say to people, I'm in the cave. The view doesn't matter. The place doesn't matter. It's once I get started, the hardest thing is to get started. Once I get started, boom, I'm off and running.
I noticed you slid right by that retreat, because I've been so strategically hinting that I'd be invited to that at some point.
It's a closed group these days.
Yeah, these days. You closed it after I asked.
No. It's been like that for, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years. We kind of realised that it's the same group all the time, and we kind of realised that so much has been shared that it's kind of difficult for new, other people to fit in. So, yeah. That said, I'm thinking of a couple of friends and I are thinking of organising a different kind of retreat with a completely different group. So you're still in with a chance.
Okay.
It's a long way to come.
I know this one is going to be like in a prison or something like that.
No. We'll have a gorgeous spot. Have a gorgeous spot. And my rule is, if it's going to be a retreat, it needs to be near the beach, because I think water is very inspiring. You don't have to swim, but just looking at the beach, just looking out in the ever-changing water and the sea and the sky is just gorgeous. And walking along the beach is just, brainstorming with a friend is just brilliant, Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, so it will never be in a hole or a prison or anything like that.
Okay. I've got you recorded now, promising I'd be considered.
Yep.
How do you think you've changed and evolved as a writer since you were first published?
I hope I've got better. I cut more than I used to, I think. Look, I tend to overwrite. I tend to overwrite in general, and I have got better at cutting back and pruning back a lot of the extraneous stuff. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't, because I don't reread my old books, because I heard someone say once at a writers' conference that a book, as far as he was concerned, a book is never finished. It's just that someone takes it off him. And that's exactly how I feel. It's, once it's gone, the editor's got it, it's published. I can't change it. I'm not even going to look at it, because I will want to change it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been an interesting process with having the rights back to some of my books and putting them out, because a number of them I have felt that way, and I've changed some of them quite a bit. One of them I really, in essence, I rewrote it. And yet some of them, it feels like, yes, I could go in and I could change things, and I'm a better writer than I am now, but there's a completeness to what it is. As that finished book.
Yes, yeah. Look, not so long ago, well, a while ago, Mary Jo Putney got my very first book, Gallant Waif, to read, because they put it on Kindle. And she said, I've just bought your first book, Gallant Waif, and I'm about to read it. I went, don't, it's terrible. And she read it, and she got back and she said, don't worry, it's lovely. It's a book of its time. It's the storytelling is lovely. Don't worry about it. Anyone will enjoy it. And, she's right. It's a book of its time. Yeah. And the storytelling still works. Yes. And the characters work. And I don't know. I'm hopeless talking about my own writing. But, she reassured me that, it's fine.
Well, and as readers, we love to go back to those books written in other times, written in other manners and styles, because they were the style of that time. So it's just a little closer in time.
And I think, something has been lost in this drive to eliminate adverbs and adjectives and all of that sort of stuff. I think there's a lushness in some of those older books. I recently reread a bunch of Jane Ann Krentz, Amanda Quick books, and also Elizabeth Lowell's medieval. She did a medieval trilogy that has always been a favourite, and the books are practically falling apart, and I bought them again on Kindle. And, there was a lushness about those books that's just so, you just don't get these days.
I think one of the things I like in some of the older books is a different tempo. And I don't want to say they're necessarily slower, but they let characters develop over the course, and you don't have the course of the book, and you don't necessarily have to know. There's a tendency to, especially with contemporaries, to throw characters into danger right away. And maybe this is only me, but I think, I don't care. I don't know who this is. I need to know who they are before they're in danger.
I completely agree. There's characters opening in danger. Some people can do it really well. Dick Francis does it particularly well. There's one of his, and I can't think of the story, but it opens with a scene where the character is handcuffed to the wheel of a car in the desert, sweating, about to die first kind of thing. But the character's thoughts really intrigue you. And there's another one.
So then you do care.
Charles. So you do care. That's right. You get to know the character by his responses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's missing about in the ones that you're talking to. Lee Child did it with his first book, Tilling Floor, where his character is sitting there in a diner. He's just arrived in town. He's having his breakfast, and police cars are coming for him with guns and things. And, he knows perfectly well it's in danger, but his thoughts as he's analysing what's about to happen and how it's working, you think this guy's smart. He's really clever, and you're with him, whereas a lot of the times people are just reacting and you don't actually get to know them.
You have to feel the character.
Yeah, and I did it in Autumn Bride. That was the first book of a series, and I was so worried about how readers would like that book because, as I said to friends all the time, this book isn't really a love story between a man and a woman. It's a love story between a group of four girls and an old lady, and it kind of was because the hero, a friend of mine who's an editor and a reviewer, came up to me at a conference later, and she said something like, page 198? And I went, what are you talking about? And she said, when the hero arrived. And she was right. But people really liked it. People really liked that, readers loved the sort of the relationship developing between the old lady and the girls. So they forgave the fact that it wasn't insta-love straight up. And I don't do insta-love anymore. I didn't really ever, but, there was always the pressure to get them together pretty quickly. I let the characters tell me now and hope that readers will follow.
Now, are all of your books set in the Regency period?
Yeah, all my historicals are. I wrote one romantic comedy for Harlequin years ago, but didn't continue that. That was contemporary. I would love to write contemporary romantic comedy, but I'm not a fast writer, so maybe not. Yeah, and I think it's Georgette Heyer that I kind of feel as though I grew up in Georgette Heyer's Regency, so that's, it feels natural to me.
What's your feeling about the research, and how do you approach that?
Okay, the research depends entirely on the book and the characters. Sometimes, if it's only about if the story's mainly about the characters and pretty much set in London, there's not a lot of research to do because a lot of it's stuff that I already know. When it's been set in wartime, I have had to do quite a bit of research and work out where people were at one time and, this dates and battles and all that. I set a book in Regency era Egypt, and that was, I loved the research for that. It was fantastic. I used a lot of travellers travelling in Egypt at that time. These days, it's the first book I ever had to do huge amounts of research for was my second book called Tally's Night, which was pretty much set. Most of it was on taking the Grand Tour. And so I had to do a lot of research for that. But what I found was a published, it was in the rare book collection of my state library, and it was a whole series of letters from a young woman doing the grand tour with a bunch of friends, writing back about the experience to her brother, who was a peer in Ireland.
Oh, how
wonderful. And so, yeah, and that was fantastic. I ended up being able to buy that book. I bought it online from an Irish bookseller in a rare book library. But these days, with there's so many of those books and journals and collections of letters that are on online, and you can just get them. And so I had the most wonderful, you can glean so much gorgeous detail from those witnesses. People, some people write really boring letters home, and others write really fascinating ones. And that's really good. So when I do the research, it's fun. It's not a chore. And, I think people who write contemporaries have to do research too.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So, yeah, it's a furphy, a rumour that you don't have to do as much research.
Oh, no, you definitely have to do research. I always have a moment in my books. I refer to my granite steps moment in my books. My first book was set in Wisconsin, and I had this, it's an offhand line about them walking up granite steps to a courthouse, I think, but a public building. I had this sudden fear as I'm reading over I think it was the page proofs at that point. Oh my God, what if for some reason they don't have granite steps in Wisconsin? I don't know why. I couldn't think of any reasonable reason they wouldn't. But so I'm on the phone calling, I called courthouses, most of whom thought I was nuts, didn't want to talk to me. And then I had a clerk. I had a court clerk whose son studied rocks. And I said, all right. And she said, absolutely, they are granite steps. Okay.
Yeah.
So there is always something that you fret about. But the other side of that, though, is that the Regency readers are famed. Sorry for that background noise. That was my dog dropping her 18-inch long chew on the heat register.
Oh, okay. Well, my Millie dog is jealous in that case.
So what I was saying is that Regency, readers are famed for knowing all of the ins and outs and the details. And have you ever been called to account by any of the readers?
Well, yeah, I have. Look, generally I get it right because, having been brought up with Georgia High, I'm sort of mostly I'm right. There's one in particular where I got things spectacularly wrong, and it's the research that you think that you then don't look up that gets you into trouble. And there were two things. One is I had a lemon tree growing in Shropshire, and I had a lovely English lady write and say, look, by the way, our climate would kill a lemon tree. There's no way you've got lemon trees growing. But the American writers did not pick that up. The American readers didn't pick that up. It was just a local lady. My worst one was when I had my heroine's mother take a pilgrimage to Lourdes to pray for a son. She was a French woman. 70 years before St. Bernadette had her vision. And that's because Anne thought she knew the date and didn't look it up, didn't she? And I had Catholics from all over the world, because I have lots of foreign translations. I had Catholics from all over the world writing and saying, and I had to say, mea culpa, I'm sorry.
Mea culpa is very, very appropriate.
Yes, that's right. So, yes. But, it's the things that you think and don't dare look up that they're most likely to get me, at any rate, into trouble.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you share some of your research on a blog with multiple other authors, the Writing Wenches.
Yes.
have you found that blogging has had any impact on your writing of novels?
Look, I don't really think the blogging has, but for me, knowing the word wenches has been a huge thing in my writing career, because in Australia, when I first got published, there were two other writers published in romance in Australia. One of them was Stephanie Lawrence, who I know very well. She's a good friend, but she was already out of my league. And the other lived far distant. And I just didn't know anyone else published in New York, to talk to. And so I actually met Mary Jo Putney and Joe Beverly and Pat Rice at that very same NINC conference in San Diego where I met you. And I met, because that was quite a small conference, and for me that was brilliant, because I came knowing nobody, I already knew Jane Porter. She came, but yeah, I came knowing virtually nobody, and I left there having made a bunch of friends. And then I went to the second NINC conference, my second NINC conference, which was in New York. And I remember you took me for a drink at the end of that, and I still owe you a cocktail, I'm sure, a fancy cocktail.
We need you back at NINC.
I've only fed you wine when you're in Australia, or whatever you do when you don't feed. Being with that group of people, we talk a lot offline, online, sort of, in a little email group. And I get some really good advice there. So it's not so much that it's affected my writing, but it's definitely affected my sense of my career, or something like that.
So more of the conversation is about career, or is there also conversation about craft and
everything.
Oh, good.
Everything. We'll talk about craft, we'll talk about dogs, we'll talk about cats, we'll talk about covers, we'll talk about edit, we'll talk about anything.
I knew cats had to work in there with Mary Jo.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I like cats. I'm just allergic to them. Yeah, it's all sorts of stuff. And sometimes I'll talk with one or two of them off, in just a private email, saying, well, I'm not sure, what do you think, blah, blah. It's great, and I'm very lucky in that I get to read some of their stories before they hit the stand. So that's a little perk that we have. It's great.
And that for readers who might not be familiar, Mary Jo Putney, Joe Beverly, and Patricia Rice have all also written many historicals, wonderful historicals.
We're actually, there's 8 of us. There's Joanna Bourne as well. There's Nicola Cornick from England. There's Susanna Kearsley, who writes fantastic kind of time slip stuff. She's Canadian. Andrea Pickens, who also writes as Andrea Penrose, and Cara Elliott. What links us all is the historical aspect of our writing. Susan King, is another one. She writes historicals, but not so much historical romance, but historical novels. So, basically the word wenches are historical, and that's what links us all.
Well, as long as we're talking about other writers, this is a good opportunity to ask you a really interesting question from a reader. She says, if you could write a book with any author, alive or dead, who would you want to work with and why?
Oh, look, I don't know. I could have, take me back 5 years and I would have been happy to say, oh, this person, that person, the other person. But now I have actually written linked books. We did a couple of years ago, the Word Wenches did a linked series of Christmas novellas.
Oh.
And and it was really tricky, as it was all based around a particular event, a Christmas ball, and so just getting that in, I was thinking, oh, it just became a nightmare at times. It was fun, but it was tricky. And I realised how much of a control freak I am about my books. And I think everybody is. I think all writers are. My friend Sarah Mabry just co-wrote a book with Serena Bowen, and I'm a huge fan of both of them. They write contemporary romance, and I'm a huge fan of both of them. And I had dinner with lunch with Sarah recently, and I was grilling her about how it went, and she loved it. She said it was wonderful, and it was just getting her to describe the process was fascinating. So yeah, I would, I think I would like to, but it would just depend on who and their writing process, not so much the writing that they've produced.
Oh, interesting.
But their writing process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm a huge fan of so many different people, and I don't just read romance. I read fantasy and crime and paranormal and all sorts. So, any of those would be fantastic, but it's, I'm a huge fan of people's writing, but I don't know whether I would be able to work with them because it takes a certain amount of give and take.
True. So how would you entertain, since this is fantasy, would you entertain working with Georgette Heyer?
Having read her biography by Jennifer Closter, probably not. Look, I tell you what, I'd probably be able to write with and enjoy writing with someone like Mary Jo Putney. I would love to write with. I've got a couple of friends who write contemporaries, and I would love to write contemporaries with some of my friends. Georgette Heyer didn't even allow her editor to edit. So any suggestion from me, I think, would come with a verbal slap.
But it would be interesting to be part of the process, to watch the process. Yeah. You may not have much input, but you could, I think, it would be a really interesting learning experience.
To be a fly on the wall. It would be. And I think there's nothing I enjoy. Look, one of the things that I most enjoy when I go on my writer's retreat is I always get together with a couple of the friends there, and we brainstorm. And I love brainstorming. And I do a lot of brainstorming with friends on the phone, not just about my books, their books too. There's it's very mutual. I do what, if I say it once, I've probably said it a million times to a couple of, various of my friends. I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall here, but what about? And I'll just throw suggestions. And I'm not tied to those suggestions. I'm not hooked to those suggestions. I don't care if they say, no, that's rubbish. I just love spinning possibilities. So, I could work with somebody, but it would depend. Yeah.
So I'm probably better at brainstorming other people's stories than having brainstorming done for mine, unless it's very specific, because I have these, I have certain things that are so sharp and so clear, and I can't budge those, and they could be idiotic. It doesn't matter. I cannot budge those without losing the whole story, without losing the feel of who those people are. And that can be difficult for other people to work around because they never know where these minds are going to be. And going, nope, he's got to wear, he's got to have a dog that has 3 legs, That's all there is to it.
That's important though. That's, you've got to, I hate doing the kind of brainstorming where you say to somebody, what about this? And they say, oh yeah, that'll work, thanks. It never happens like that. With my writer friends, they say, no, that can't work because of this. And no, I don't like that yet. No, it's a great idea, but not for this story. No, that's not going to work. That's not going to work with my hero. No, my heroine's nothing like that. That's how it works. We've got to be the boss of the story because it's all kinds of weird little intangible things that make it a story and not an idea.
That's a great way of saying it, Anne. Yeah, I like that. So we've gotten all writerly here. Let's take it back and talk some more about a little bit more about the readers.
Yeah.
You said you have letters from readers about what stories they want to hear from you. Have you had other? Do you have a lot of other contact with readers, or do you have great stories about what they've written to you? Or
yes, I have one in particular. It was pretty funny. Look, I interact mostly on Facebook with readers. There's a lot of lovely people who write to me and tell me stuff, and lots of people send me email because they go to my website and Anne at AnneGracie.com, and here comes emails. I've got lots of emails, and I try and reply to everything. Not always immediately, but yeah.
Any funny ones?
Probably, yeah. The funniest one was from a professor in the US who wrote, I wish I could quote it, but I haven't got it here, wrote me this fabulous letter. He'd just read The Perfect Rake. He said he thought I was the best writer since Jane Austen.
My goodness.
Yeah, and then he went on to say, and what must it feel like to have your best work behind you? Because he didn't like the following book. He didn't like the rest of the series. He didn't like the heroes of the rest of the series. So, yes, I was a has-been.
Your best work behind you.
But yeah, absolutely. But you know what? He and I had an ongoing correspondence that lasted for quite a long time. And, he's an interesting bloke. And, but that very first one where, what must it feel like to have your best work behind you?
That's so indicative of you, Anne, that you did have an ongoing conversation with him rather than just blasting him back or ignoring him.
Oh, look, he was fascinating. I'd find people really interesting. I've been lucky in that I've never had nasty stuff. So, I've never felt the need to be angry at anyone. I think it's fair enough if people don't like some of my books. There's not an author alive that I've got, and I live in a house that's absolutely drowning in books. But not every author hits the exact spot every time. And I just think, if you don't like it, fair enough. That's okay. But he was interesting. Yeah.
And I think there may be an element of that for a lot of us who are writing, that if we could find the perfect books for what we wanted to read at the time we wanted to read it, I probably wouldn't write as much. I'm often writing what I want to read.
That's exactly how I started, because that first book, Gallant Waif, I had it's about a girl who followed her father and brothers to war, or accompanied them to war, and followed the army, and ended up in a mess, as you do. And I had read a book with a heroine who had kind of done the same thing, but had waltzed through behind enemy lines, no problems at all. Met nice people along the way, sort of did the whole journey in a red silk dress and nobody blinked an eyelid. And I just thought, I don't believe that. I think it would have been grimmer. And so my heroine didn't have, a blessed, easy time of things. And it made her a stronger and more interesting person.
So you were writing what you wanted to read. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we do.
So of your books, a reader who's new to you, where would you recommend that they start? Where's a good entry point to your books?
Okay. I can never recommend my books. Look, a lot of people, the favourite hero is Gideon in The Perfect Rake. A lot of new to me readers picked up, forgotten the book, forgotten the title. A lot of new to me readers also picked up The Autumn Bride and followed that series through. Yeah, I had a bunch of not very good covers, And then I had a fabulous cover for, I think it might have been The Accidental Wedding. It's got a really beautiful, pattable bride dress on the cover. And purely because of that fantastic cover, a lot of people picked up that book and really liked it, and then went back and read, my backlist. So I've been lucky in that all my backlist with Berkeley is still in print. So I think it's kept alive because people pick up something and they like it and they go back and read the backlist.
Even with that, with people coming back into your, discovering all of your backlist like that, do you have any books that you think have not been read as much as perhaps they deserve, and that even your loyal readers may have overlooked it?
Sure. Two books that I think, my second book, Tally's Knife, it was used in the UK as a giveaway. I was too green to know what I was agreeing to. And it was used in the US as an experiment to start a new possible line. And it was shelved in the bookstores away from romance.
Oh dear.
And so a lot of people never discovered it. And it's a nice book. That's my grand tour book. The other one is probably my worst cover ever, which is a baby poo brown background with a bunch of red roses and a white rose in the middle. And that's my Chick in Pants Regency Egypt story. And, it won a few best of the years in the US and got some lovely reviews. But just because the cover tells you nothing, it nearly killed my career, that cover. And then they decided to sort of have a look at what was happening because my sales had died and it was a good book. And that's when I got the beautiful book with the gorgeous cover of the bride. And that just bounced my career back up into living again. So, yeah.
Well, those are great recommendations for readers. And
look, even though I write series, all my books are standalone as well as being a part of a series. So you can pick up anyone anytime.
And you've mentioned your website, but mention it again.
Okay, it's www.annegracie.com, and it's Anne with an E and Gracie with an IE. I'm on Facebook as just Anne Gracie. Just do a Google search; it'll pop up.
And the give them the wenches.
Wordwenches. .com. I think. I don't know.
And we'll have the URLs. We'll have the URLs written in the show notes. So people, and it's so much easier to click from that than it is from. I've been known to try to write down URLs while people were talking. That's very difficult.
Okay. Well, I just Google people. So yeah.
Is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't, or that you would like to answer that you haven't been asked?
No.
That was always...
No, it's been lovely.
We're not done yet.
I've really enjoyed it.
I consider this the epilogue. It's might be my favorite part. It's rapid fire either or questions. You can only pick one. I've had trouble with some other authors about that. So let's go. Binge watch or make the watching last as long as possible.
Make the watching last.
Cowboy boots or hiking boots?
Cowboy.
Tea?
I have red cowboy boots.
Oh, ooh. How high up are they?
Yeah.
Are they, just mid-calf?
Just above mid-calf, yeah.
Tea or coffee?
Fat legs here. Coffee.
Really? Okay, that surprised me. Cake or ice cream?
Ice cream.
Day or night?
Both.
I knew you were going to be trouble.
I told you I was going to be trouble.
Well, okay, I was going to ask you mountains or beach, but I think I know that one. So this is still...
No, both.
Okay, mountains or beach?
My favorite, both. One of my favorite places is lawned in Victoria, where there are hills in the background going into a little low mountain range, and it goes right down to the beach. That's the best. Perfect combination of both. But otherwise beach.
So sailboat or motorboat?
Motor.
Gardening or house decorating?
Gardening.
Okay, then I can't ask you this other one. Let's see. Toenail polish.
Well, you can, because I do.
Toenail polish or bare toenails?
Bare. I do wear oh, sorry.
You do wear?
I was going to annoy you again. Yeah, I do wear, in summer I have toenail polish. In winter, the rest of the time I have bare.
Definitely more during the summer. Appetizer or dessert?
Appetizer.
Let's see, what else which one is eerier to you? An owl hooting or coyotes howling?
I'd love them both. I've never heard coyotes howling, and I have, no, we don't have them. And I only ever go to cities usually, so yeah, I've never heard coyotes. I would love to hear coyotes. We have dingoes, but it's not the same thing.
You will have to come and stay with me, because I have both, and especially...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if they have like fireworks, it sets the coyotes out. And then
Wow.
I will try to get my dog to go out, and she looks at me like, "Are you crazy, lady?" I'm not going out there. So.
I do have a dog that sings along to Ella Fitzgerald. Only Ella Fitzgerald. She won't sing to anything else, but put Ella Fitzgerald on and she howls like crazy. So yeah.
And what is her name?
That's the closest I can get. Millie.
Well, that's wonderful. On that note, I think we'll say thank you so much, Anne Gracie, for coming all the way from Australia by the wonders of technology. It's been wonderful, as it always is when we have a chance to talk. And I hope the rest of you...
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
Great. I hope the rest of you will come back next week for another author. We can try to find out more about the stories behind the stories.
Yep, I will certainly be here listening to that.
That's the show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining Authors Love Readers podcast. Remember, you can always find out more about our guest authors in the show notes, and you can find out more about me at www.patriciamclinn.com. You can also send in questions to be asked of future authors at podcast@authorslovereaders.com. Until next week, wishing you lots of happy reading. Bye.